what exactly is it that gives a guitarist sound its personality? Is it the tone, the gear, phrasing? If you answered any of those, then yes, you are of course correct. But in my personal opinion, the number one biggest factor that contributes towards a guitarist's personality is definitely their vibrato. Whether it's Marty Friedman's sexy wide vibrato, or Brandon Ellis's even wider vibrato, or Steve Vai's awesome circular vibrato, or Stevie Ray Vaughan's bloodthirsty, vicious blues vibrato, or Guthrie's sweet operatic vibrato, or Kirk Hammett's So what's fascinating to me is that all of these guitarists are playing the very same instruments, yet all sound so wildly different from each other thanks to, their personal touch on the instrument and their vibrato. And what I especially love about this technique is that there isn't a correct, textbook way how to do it, right? It's completely subjective. And I'm a firm believer that every guitarist has their own ideal perfect sound of what a guitar should sound like, right, in their head. And a part of that sound, of course, is how they think vibrato should sound too. For example, the guitar I hear in my head has always been kind of very big, saturated guitar with wide, slow vibrato, yeah? That's always been the guitar that I've heard in my head. Yeah, obviously that's going to vary wildly between guitarist to guitarist. And I know for a fact that a lot of people really don't like the sound of big 80s style wide vibrato. I can understand that. I think this sort of it sounds very grating and obnoxious to a lot of people. And I know some people prefer a smaller sort of a more gentle vibrato. And others like the more sort of faster, kind of bluesy kind of vibrato. So yeah, everyone has their own kind of mental image, their own type, I guess, right, of what they think vibrato should sound like. And as with any more abstract and esoteric subject, this makes it a bit of a tricky thing to teach. Much like how it was when I did the phrasing masterclass a while back. It's kind of a similar kind of deal, where it's a lot more personal, right, and less by the book. But in this lesson, I'm going to show you some best practices, some tips, and just sort of instructions on how you can go about recreating the most popular styles of vibrato, I suppose, which will hopefully push you in the right direction in choosing your own style. Right, so what exactly is vibrato? I've been warbling on about this now for a few minutes, but I haven't really explained what it is, in case you don't know. So the definition, the official textbook definition of vibrato is a type of musical effect where a note changes pitch subtly and quickly. Its name originates from the Italian word vibrare, meaning vibrate, which corresponds with the pulsating effect in vocals or instrument when vibrato is being performed. So that all sounds very technical and lofty, but essentially all it is, when holding a note, instead of just holding it like this, with no expression, when you add vibrato, you give it a sort of a little bit of this, right? Yeah, so it doesn't really seem like much in isolation, but when you put it in the context of a song or a solo or a lick or whatever, it's these sort of things that really makes your playing pop and gives it character, right? Because if you just play everything with no vibrato, which some people do, and I guess that's even an approach in itself, generally it just makes your playing sound very sort of flat and a bit amateur. Oftentimes what separates a amateur guitarist from a pro guitarist is their ability to use vibrato properly and add additional sort of articulations and dynamics to their playing, right? For example, instead of just playing something yeah, which sounds very kind of uninspiring, right? If you add vibrato to it,
just notice how much more that sings compared to not using any vibrato, right? So personally, when I think of vibrato, I think about how singers do it. Because no matter what instrument you're on, I think that you should always be aspiring to be very vocal with your vibrato, right? I think that you should be trying to emulate a voice, essentially. And this is why I like kind of slow, wide-ish vibrato. Because that's very vocal. That's kind of like how singers commonly perform vibrato. And I don't really like it when I hear a singer that does very sort of like fast, warbly vibrato. Sort of like Kirk Hammett style, like this kind of thing. Yeah, you know, when a singer's like going, yeah, I don't know, that just doesn't sound right. It doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't sound pretty. So I guess that's like quick tip number one, is when thinking about vibrato, is to always reference singers. So just pick like, I don't know, some singers that you like, or if you're not really into vocal music, go listen to some like, you know, popular songs or whatever that feature good singers in, and just pay very close attention to what they're doing with their voice when it comes to vibrato, right? Because, you know, this isn't really something that guitarists pay attention to a lot of the time. You know, we're not really programmed to listen to vocals. But I found that my playing really took on a whole new level when I started to pay more attention to vocalists and sort of how they phrase their, you know, their vocal lines, and how they articulate, and how they do vibrato. This can really, really affect your lead playing in a big way, right? Remember, just because an instrument isn't guitar doesn't mean that you can't learn something from it, right? And vocals is a big one when it comes to lead playing. So that's homework assignment number one, is to go listen to some great singers and really pay attention to, like, not the music or the backing or the lyrics or whatever. Just pay attention to how they're phrasing their vocal lines and how they're using vibrato, right? And really sort of try and move this a bit more like to the forefront of your musical brain. But also, this leads us on to another very important point, and one big negative about the guitar. You know, I fucking love guitar, best instrument in the world, hands down. But one thing that sucks about it is that you can only bend, you can only pitch up notes, right? You can't pitch notes up, you can't pitch them down, right? Unless you use a whammy bar. So, like, you know, when you're bending up, and even when you bend this way, it's still up. Which makes vibrato really awkward on guitar and sound a little bit unpleasant compared to other instruments. Imagine just like a flat note is just flat like this, right? When a singer is in vibrato, like, ah, right? It's going like this. It's wavering around that flat line. It's going up and down like a sine wave. Yet when you do vibrato on a guitar, naturally, it's only going up. It's just going like up, then back to the middle, like up, like that. In a way, it's kind of cool because it gives it that very signature rock guitar sound, because rock guitar vibrato sounds very unique in the fact that it only like vibratos up. Yeah. So yeah, just a little side note. It's not really a massive deal, and if you're only playing like rock and metal, and you only sort of like want that particular sound, then it's not really a big deal at all. Right, so I guess that leads us in nicely to the different types of vibrato. So rock vibrato, like I just mentioned, which is just your basic kind of like what you probably know already, where you're just sort of shifting the note up and then back to its original place, and up and back to its original place. So, if you don't know how to perform this kind of like standard rock vibrato, let me show you. So, you're just treating it like a bend, essentially. So, you know when you bend, you have like a couple of fingers behind it for support. Like that. I do the same with vibrato, and I think it's like the sort of most commonly accepted technique. So, you don't want to grip the neck too hard. Yeah, otherwise you're just going to like... It's going to sound horrible and you're going to do yourself an injury. So, just use the same sort of amount of tension you're using on a bend. But, yeah, you're going the other way. Just drag it down and then back up. And the same goes for any number of fingers you're using. Same for like 2. Exactly the same technique, or 1. So I think the amount of fingers I use really depends on like where I am in a phrase, right? So if I'm sort of like at the top of a phrase and I have my fingers behind me, then I'm going to use them. But if I'm at the back of a phrase, like this, and obviously I'm just going to use 1. I'm not going to like move my fingers all the way back here. Yeah, it's just awkward. So yeah, it really depends on where you are in the phrase. So that's going to take something to get, like some time to get used to. Sort of like adapting the amount of fingers you're using in vibrato, depending on where you are. And by far, the most common pitfall I see when people are learning vibrato is just sort of like not really using their ears and just sort of doing it very nervously, like this. You never want to be doing vibrato like this. No, like short, I think they're like short and like fast. Vibrato is like the worst sounding vibrato on the planet. Never be doing that. Yeah, this sort of like nervous thing, I see a lot. So don't be afraid just to take it wider. Remember, vibrato doesn't have to be really fast. If anything, it usually sounds better when it's slower. So get that out of your head, right? Just because you're playing something fast doesn't mean the vibrato has to be fast as well. Like, vibrato doesn't have to match the BPM of the music, right? I find that vibrato is pretty much just like a constant tempo, okay? So what I would maybe practice, it's just like going down a scale. I find like G string's pretty easy for vibrato. It's like a good one. So just go down like a minor scale or something. Just get every note sounding really sweet on the way down. Right, you also have classical vibrato, okay? I doubt many people use this in like the sort of rock and metal world, but it can be quite useful sometimes. So classical guitarists, when they do vibrato, they don't do this. That would sound ridiculous on an acoustic guitar. So they instead, they do a more sort of like violin-like vibrato, where we're going side to side like this. It's quite tricky. And it's a lot more subtle. There you go, hopefully you can hear that. So essentially, all you're doing is sort of like just moving your fingers side to side instead of up and down, like this. But essentially it's the same thing. You're still only doing vibrato upwards. It's just a lot more delicate and less obnoxious than like rock vibrato. I sometimes use this like on the high strings, like here, if I don't want that sort of like really like 80s like. Yeah, because that's not always appropriate, right? So sometimes I want to be a bit more gentle. And I find that it works really well on the top strings. If you just want a really, like, subtle sound. Yeah, it kind of sounds a little sort of like Steve Vai-ish. Works well on, like, the sort of little finger here at the top. And then we also have, like, two-way vibrato. You can achieve this either using the Y bar. Yeah, though I would be quite subtle with it, because if you're just doing like that, that sounds just like, that's a very particular like sort of 80s style sound, right? Which is cool, but it's sort of like beyond vibrato at that point. It's more just sort of like I don't know, it's like almost like bending, I suppose. But I find like if you just use it very subtly in sort of like I don't know, like a Sean Lane kind of way, or like Jason Becker. I really love that kind of playing. It just makes the guitar really sing and sound a lot more vocal, and I love that kind of sound. You can also do like the Guthrie style of vibrato, where you can achieve this two-way vibrato if you like bend into notes. It's a bit more tricky. For example, if you wanted to, let's say, do vibrato here, yeah, on this E. Yeah, with your regular rock vibrato, again, it's only going like up, right? But if you bend into it, like that, with like a pre-bend. So if you're playing something like, yeah, you can get that sort of like two-way effect by pre-bending into it instead of going like a. Yeah, which sounds very like rock, and if you go into it with a pre-bend, yeah, it sounds a lot sweeter and more vocal. But I don't know, it's a little bit more awkward to do that, and also you're very reliant on like how well you can like pitch your bending and stuff. You know, if you're not confident with that, it's not going to sound great, I would imagine. All right, and the next thing to think about is when to vibrato. Now, this is a tricky one. This is where it starts to get a little bit more abstract and personal and more down to sort of like intuition. So let's say we have a phrase like this. Okay, so I know for sure that I want to put some vibrato in there, but if you're sort of like new to it, then it's not going to be really obvious where you would put it, right? It's sort of like, it's obvious for me because I've been playing a long time, and I've got like I've built an intuition around it. But if you're new and not really sure what you're doing with vibrato, it might not be obvious. So I think a lot of players would know that they need to put vibrato in there somewhere, but might not be obvious where or how. For example, I think the way I would approach it would be like maybe on the first note. Whenever there's like a pause, right? But maybe not every time, because then that's going to get a bit like predictable. If it's like, that doesn't really sound too good either. So maybe I would like. Maybe only do it for every other one, perhaps? That sounds pretty good. Or maybe even just the first and last. That works too, but it's kind of nice having one in the middle. And what if you're playing like a long melody line as well? Say if you go, just do something basic like... So there's loads of options you could do with this, right? So without vibrato, it sounds like this. So this is like a blank canvas. There's so many ways you can approach this. And this is where you're sort of like, your experience and your personal taste in vibrato sort of kicks in, right? You don't want to vibrato every note. That's going to sound janky as fuck. Yeah, that doesn't sound good. So let's just try maybe the first, definitely. And that one definitely. And that last one. That's sort of like what comes naturally to me. Sort of like sticking one at the end and one at the beginning, definitely. Then maybe somewhere in the middle as well to break things up. And then I'm thinking about the type of vibrato. Really wide, it would sound like this. Alright, and doing a little bit more subtle would sound like... Maybe like fast vibrato actually works quite nice at the end there to round it off. Yeah, I don't usually like fast, but it can work in some places. It's all about just sort of like feeling it out. And another piece of advice that is mega important is to bear in mind that you don't always have to use vibrato like straight away on a note, right? Oftentimes it's best to just let the note lay for a while and then ease into it. For example, like that, yeah? So let's think about the last note of that phrase we'll be just doing. And that's like another vocal thing, right? That's super common in vocal music. You know, a singer won't always just vibrato straight off the bat, right? They'll often hold the note for a while and then sort of like on the tail end of it, add vibrato. And actually, I'm doing that quite a lot, if you notice. Like, I'm not going like... Yeah, it sounds kind of weird. So I'm letting the note sort of like rest a bit first. Alright, so next up, I'm going to play you the demo song I prepared from earlier. But I'm going to do it in 4 different variations, okay? First, I'm going to do it without vibrato, and then I'm going to play it with subtle vibrato, and then with aggressive vibrato, and then I'm going to mix it up, lastly, with different types of vibrato. And what I want you to do is to try playing along to all of them, okay? All 4 of them, because I want you to get a feel for what they all sound like. So I want you to practice, obviously getting a feel for not using vibrato, then using subtle, and then aggressive, and then mixing them all together. Because essentially, I think that's the goal, right? I think all of the best guitarists, they're all using different types of vibrato depending on the situation. It's not like they're only ever using that, right? Or only ever using that, okay? All the best guitarists will mix it all up for maximum effect. So maybe listen to each version all the way through first, just to sort of internalize it, and then grab your guitar and try playing along, mimicking exactly what I'm doing, okay? And then, once you've done all that, I want you to play along to the backing track without my lead guitar playing, and try and add your own types of vibrato, okay? Maybe like mixing in your own different types of, like subtle or aggressive, or like fast, or like two-way. Just really start to try and get a feel for it and start building that like internal intuition on how you want to approach vibrato. Cheers, guys. I sincerely hope this vibrato masterclass was helpful. You know, I've had a lot of requests to go over this stuff, as I feel like it's, like I said earlier, it's one of those kind of weird abstract topics that's kind of hard to teach, and there might not be too much information out there regarding it. So I very much hope that this answers all your questions, and as usual, if you still have anything else you want to ask, just either comment down below here in the post or ask me over on my Discord server. Always happy to help, and I shall see you for next lesson. Bye bye.
To get tabs, backing tracks, and a full video lesson, as well as a sick selection of super fun guitar workouts, courses, and resources, sign up for a free 7-day trial of Bradley Hall's Guitar School.